to Sober Sitdown, everybody. Today we have a different kind of twisted guest. We have recognized author Nick Christophers. Nick's from the New York area, and he has quite a few books out we're going to talk about today. Wide range of different style books, and one possibly to be put into a film. May I introduce you guys, Nick Christophers.
Hey guys, how you doing? Pleasure.
So Nick, for those of the people that don't know, you're from the New York area.
Yes, correct. We're originally from Rockaway Park, near the Howard Beach area, and then now I'm out on the island.
You're raised in the Howard Beach area, or you still reside there?
No, actually, Rockaway Park. Rockaway Park is near Howard Beach. It's like over the bridge. I just say that so people may not know where Rockaway Park is. That's why I say Howard Beach area, because it's close by. No, my parents moved there many years ago, and then we eventually left there, and because my father opened a cafe, which I'll explain later, in the Long Island area. So that's when we moved there. So I've been there ever since.
So the early years for Nick. Who was Nick growing up? What kind of guy were you? Were you into sports? What kind of stuff were you into? What kind of crew did you hang out with?
When I was a little kid, I would say elementary school. I guess we could start there, I guess. I was a quiet guy. I was a quiet kid, skinny little kid. I wasn't, noisy or anything. I was kept to myself pretty much. And because I love to write and I love to draw. That's what I loved to do when I was a kid. But when I was in elementary school, kids used to pick on me every day. I was bullied every single day and beat up every day. Every time I walked home from school, I got jumped all the time. From the Italian kids, the Irish kids. I'm Greek, by the way. So it wasn't because of my nationality. I was easy prey, I guess, at that point. And after elementary school, I started working at my dad's cafe, and that's when I got to know, not yet, but I realized a lot of guys coming to my dad's cafe, they were wise guys. We had Angelo Ruggiero, who was from John Gotti's crew, Vic Arena, who was the boss of the Colombo family, Johnny Booby Sarsani from Sonny Black's crew. All these guys, we had our own bookie coming in, Sally. So I was watching all these guys, and I was like getting enamored by these. They came in there with nice clothes and nice cars and threw money around like it was water. So it was intoxicating just watching them, And then at the same time, while being in junior high school at this time, if you remember, I was getting beat up before. I was getting bullied. So the only way I knew how to salvage this problem was to join a gang. And there was a gang in the school that the leader was Greek, just like I was. And I connected with him and started hanging out with those guys. And eventually I had to get initiated, had to do something. So I decided to shoplift. So I shoplifted a Playboy magazine, believe it or not. And I got caught. When I was walking out of the store, the cop at the time saw me. And he said to me, where do you think you're going? I'm going home. Where am I going? And he goes, well, pull up your shirt. This was like in the summertime, so I shoved it down my shirt. And he told me to take it. He lifted my shirt and saw what I took. Because back then we didn't have cameras. So he saw me somehow. And he told me, listen, give me your phone number, your father's name, your address. I'm going to call your house. I'm going to make sure you get home. So back then we respected the cops. We did whatever they, did. We didn't make a fuss about it. So at that point I ran home as quick as I could, so I could get to the phone before my father did. So I was able to manage that and not get busted. So since that day, my father still never knows that it even happened. So that was kind of like my initiation, pretty much, getting involved with the gang. So that's when I started, the combination of seeing the wise guys and joining a gang in junior high, that's what kind of put me on the road of liking the life, being attracted to that kind of world. I got pinched when I was 21. for assault. So that was kind of me growing up. I mean, I loved, like you said, what I like to do. I love to draw. I love to write. I still did that, you know. And as a matter of fact, my love for writing increased in junior high school because we, in my English class, we were required to read a book. It was called The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
I had to read
I'm
it
not
too.
sure if you know
I
the
had to
book.
read it too in high school.
There you go. So that book, I felt a connection to it because of the characters, Pony Boy and Johnny. I felt like I was like them kind of thing. So that inspired me to start writing stories
Nick, not to interrupt
of
you,
that
but
nature.
for the audience that didn't read that book,
Oh,
that was a big movie that they created into a movie back in the 80s with Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, a lot of the up-and-coming actors of the 80s that became popular later on. I think Emilio Estevez, all those guys. Is that the same book and movie that you're talking about with the preppies and the they call them the socias and the greasers, right? Yeah.
the Greasers and the Socials, that's right. That's correct. Yeah. That's what they called us when I was in junior high. They called us the Greasers. We were the hoods. You know, that's what that was the same, at that time, this going back to the 80s, you know, it was, maybe even earlier, late 70s. We had social groups in our school. We had the jocks, the greasers, and you know the Japs. You know the Jewish people. We call them Japs. We call them. So they had like different groups that you fell into, depending where you fit. I fit in with the greasers and the hoods. That's the way it kind of was, but just like the Outsiders, same exact theory. So that's why I felt connected to it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you that I didn't have a common story coming up because when I was young, I was a really small guy going into high school, and I was getting bullied, you know, every day by this one kid I remember in particular, and every day he was kicking my ass, and then finally, you know, I didn't believe in telling on people, so you know, after I just got so pissed off one day, I cracked him with a textbook across the mouth, and almost knocked him out in the middle of the hallway. And ever since that day, he stopped bothering me. But you know, on Sundays, my dad used to have big football parties at the house with a lot of the guys because my dad owned a local bar and restaurant, and there was everybody in that basement from doctors, lawyers, dentists, guys that were in organized crime. And when I say organized crime, I don't mean like the Italian mafia. Like these guys were like professional thieves, scam artists, anything you can think of. But it wasn't I don't want people to have a misinterpretation. It wasn't links to the Italian mafia or anything local. That's one thing I'm not, as a liar, and I'm not gonna egotistically boost myself up into somebody I'm not. But there was just a wide variety of people. So you know, I was telling these guys, you know, like, you know, when I was a freshman in high school, I'm like, I'm getting my ass kicked every day. This kid keeps kicking my ass. And like, you know, I remember the one guy, he was a big time thief, and he taught me on my dad's heavy bag to throw the 1-2, and I didn't throw the 1-2. I just threw the textbook. So I threw the big hardcover textbook, and you know, it's weird though. Like you said though, like same thing like with me growing up. I graduated in 2003, and it was the same thing. Like, you know, you had your jocks, you had your guys that were, you know, into wearing, you know, baggy jeans and white T-shirts, which would be like the modern day greasers, which I always, for some reason, attracted to hanging out with the crew I shouldn't have hung out with. I rather people that had my back and people that came from nothing and, you know, stuck together, that bond, like you're talking about, that bond of being in like a gang with people, rather than educating myself and looking forward to the future. And, you know, I really, you know, there was no guidance. I knew that hanging out with that crew, it didn't matter if I hung out with that crew or people that were going off to college. I was going into the family business regardless once I left high school. I wasn't going to college. I was going right into the family business. At that point in time, my dad was very successful. I'm like, I'm just going to follow in my dad's footsteps, and I'm going to go into the family business. And, you know, it was a bar restaurant. So with that came, after high school, which led me into my addiction. I went from being, you know, a busboy to a cook to a waiter to a bartender, and then bartender to a manager. And then, you know, before you know it, you hang out in a barbershop, you get your hair cut, you start partying when you work in a bar, you know, and it just, life took its course. I had my own restaurant for a while as I got older, and it's not good for an alcoholic to own a bar. I'm just gonna leave it at that. We make our mistakes, and I'm here trying to preach to people don't make the same mistakes I did. And with you growing up, you said you always had a hobby of like writing and drawing and stuff. Was there any point in your life when you were in high school that like you had alternative dreams? Because one of my alternative dreams was I started playing hockey. That's where once I started getting ready to channel that aggression that I had built up from getting like picked on when I was a kid, I converted it into boxing, going into the weight room, and then I started playing hockey. I got really good at hockey. So my goal after I got out of high school was I didn't just want to take over my dad's family business. I wanted to be a hockey player. And, I started it way too late, but I was pretty good locally. But I was more of a fighter than I was a goal scorer. So that really didn't get me too far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, during junior high school is when I developed a love for writing after reading the book. So that kind of helped. And I was always writing all the time. Poems, songs. I played in a band actually for 4 years. Started my own band. So rock music, that is. So hanging out with those guys, getting into trouble and stuff like that, fighting the black kids, fighting the jocks, But that kind of, I kind of walked away from it for a bit. When I got to high school, I started developing a different mentality. And I started doing better in classes and stuff like that. So I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be I loved comic art. I loved that kind of stuff. And I love writing fantasy stories and stuff like this because I love mythology. So I started, I was thinking to do something like that. Do something in the art world or the writing world. So I did happen to, graduate somehow, high school, and I ended up going to an art college in Manhattan. And that's where my dream of being a artist / writer, that's where that developed. Unfortunately, the art thing never came to fruition, so I stuck to writing. And I've been doing that ever since for, 25 years now? Something like that. So that's, and when getting back to what you were saying about bullying, when I was in, back in my day, we had counselors, but the kids, back then you didn't go to a counselor. Because if you went to a counselor, people looked at you like you were a wussy. Oh, what are you going to go cry to mommy? You're going to go cry to your counselor? So you didn't want to get that rep. Because most of the guidance counselors in my school, junior high school and high school, their offices were empty half the time. Because nobody would go there. Because it was like you were going to be labeled as a sucker. Oh, look at him, he's going to go cry, go tell his counselor all his problems. So I never did that. Not because it wasn't available, it's just the way it was. But I think nowadays it's a little bit different. Not just nowadays, in the past maybe, 20 years I would say. The idea of helping people, young kids who are bullied, there's so many different outlets out there to help. Like my friend Johnny Alite that I did the book Prison Rules with. Johnny goes around talking to kids all the time. High schools, colleges, telling them to stay off the street, that's not the way to go. There's other ways of fighting bullying. There's so many different other ways of combating that. Which I think a lot of kids, if they're listening, or parents listening, there's always ways to get around it somehow. To reach out. There's nothing to be embarrassed about.
I have a daughter, and I try teaching her, don't run away from your problems, face the problem. So like you're saying, like to handle adversity, when there's a problem going on, kids picking on kids or anything like that, like find out what the problem is. Like not everybody's going to like anybody. Not everybody's going to like everybody growing up. You're always going to have somebody that doesn't like you for some odd reason. It's just the way life is. Not everybody's going to like you. And that was a big problem in my past was, the validation of others was a high priority of mine. I always wanted everybody to like me. I was a crowd pleaser. I wanted everybody to like me, and didn't realize that, you know, no matter what you did, there's always gonna be those people that are haters on you for no reason. Just that's just the way it is. So I try to explain to my daughter, you know, you can't go through life thinking everybody's gonna be your friend. And I learned, you know, you keep your circle small, but as far as like handling adversity and stuff like that, try and like use your brain and figure out what's the best solution at the time. Don't run from your problems, but try and come up with a logical problem-solving solution. You know, whether it's like asking your parents, like for the younger generation that's out there, like ask your parents for advice. You know, I don't condone running and telling all the time. Like I don't know. That's that, you know, that's like code for me. Like I don't like that telling, you know, tattletaling stuff. So I try to tell my daughter, like, don't run and tattletale on people. Like, try and face the problem. Like, ask the, like, if you have a kid bothering you, like, she had this one girl bothering her, like, a year ago, and her mother really didn't agree with the advice I gave her because it really was kind of a little too much how I would have handled the situation. But I kind of just, and I'm not going to say it over the segment, but I told her, just ask the girl, like she's 7, so, like, imagine saying this to a 7-year-old. Like, I just told her, I said, like, ask her, like, what's your problem? Like, what is your problem? If you don't like me, stay away from me. You know, like, you know, just try and use your words rather than your fists. There's me and Anthony Arlotta had a segment the other day, and we were talking about ways to get back at people, and ways to use revenge in a non-violent state. And you know, like we talked, you know. Frank Sinatra always said, and that's one of my favorite quotes, is, how does it go? The best form of revenge is massive success. So, you know, if you want to get back at somebody, get back at them by being more successful than they are. You know, outplay the player, you know?
Well, that would be nice if that would work all the time. But I'm guilty of the same thing you're guilty of with your daughter. With my son, my son's 24. So when my son was entering junior high school, mind you, my son's at that point, I think he was a maybe 2nd degree black belt in Taekwondo. Now he's 4th degree. So he can kick my ass for sure. But I kind of told him then, you know, if anybody gets in your face, if it's just words, walk away. Let them say what they want to say. Ignore them, because that's the worst thing you can do. Because you ignore them, that hurts and that bothers me even more. Because then they'll just leave you alone pretty much, because you're just ignoring them, walking away. I said, but the only thing, his mother, same thing, got mad at me when I said it. I said, if anybody puts your hand on you, you know, whatever, if they push you, touch you, whatever, first thing you do is knock them out. Punch them in the face. First thing. After that, they'll leave you alone forever. Just like your story, which you did. He never bothered you again, right? And sometimes, 9 out of 10, sometimes your enemy becomes your best friend. It happens a lot of times. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself. You can't, if other alternatives don't work, you know, talking to your parents, talking to your counselor, maybe even trying to appease the person, like you said. Sit down with the person, talk to the person, hey, what's going on? What did I do to you? What was the issue? You know, if there's something we can fix, if not, I'll walk away from you, you walk away from me. And that's the end of it. But sometimes the bullies don't acknowledge that. To them, it's just, all they understand is violence. So, unfortunately, it depends on the situation. It really all depends. You know, for girls like your daughter, I think women are less prone to hitting each other, even though I saw some good girl fights. But most of the time, they're less prone to it than we are.
I mean, we live in a very styrofoam era right now. I mean, I don't think kids are even out bullying kids unless it's over social media or something. It's more harassment than anything right now. So I mean, like,
oh yeah,
you know, and like, you know, like me and Anthony were talking about the other day. Like, you can't make other people relevant. Like, by you letting people get into your life and letting them like bother you like that, you're making them relevant. They're, like you said, you ignore them, that pisses them off more than feeding into them. You know, you need to learn how to not make people relevant in your life that are going to bring you down. Like me, like I learned a couple of years ago, you know, about positive energy and negative energy. And if I have people that are negative around me, like I immediately, like, if I'm on the phone with family and they start getting negative, I'm like, I can't continue this phone call. I got to go right now. And I'll hang up. Like, I will not let negativity bring me down like it used to. It took a lot of years to figure out when you have negative energy around you, you're going to be negative. And when you have positive energy around you, you're going to be positive. So I try and, like, I tell, like, my family members, I tell my small circle of friends that I have that I trust, because when I was successful, when I had my own businesses and stuff, people that I thought were my friends were just riding my wave. And, you know, now I keep my circle small, the people that I know that are loyal to me, because when I had to go through a rebuilding phase, they stuck by my side through my rebuilding phase. So I know they're true friends. And with that being said, you know, I don't let anybody bring that negativity around me. Like, people bring negativity around me, I'm like, keep it at the door. Like, just leave it go.
Yeah, I agree.
But you mentioned Johnny Alite earlier. He's a big inspiration to me. I really like a lot of the content Johnny Alite has. He's a great dude. You know, I love how, you know, what he's doing, preaching out to the young kids. You guys had a really, really good book together called Prison Rules. What year did that come out in?
Good question. I think it was about 2018, 19, something like that. I don't know the exact date off the
What
top
like
of my head.
inspired you guys to get together on that project? Like, how did that play out? Like, how did you guys get together? What got that started? And if you want to explain to the audience, people that don't know Prison Rules, which is an outstanding book, I suggest people, you know, go out and get it. What it's a little bit about.
Well, Prison Rules was John's idea, and a good friend of mine, Eddie, who runs a blog called Cosa Nostra News, which is about the mob. And me and Eddie were talking, and he said to me, "You got to speak to John." I said, "All right." So me and John hung out. We met up one night in Jamaica, Queens. And after me and John started talking, it just so happened we knew a lot of the same guys growing up. So we connected just for the fact that we, you know, hung around some of the same people. And so John liked that fact that me and John, you know, I hung around that kind of world. So he thought of an idea after he did the book Gotti's Rules with George Anastasia. He thought of doing another book called Prison Rules. And he wanted to work with me on it because he knew I would be able to give it, you know, the correct twist, correct spin that he was looking for. And the spin was basically, the book starts, you know, it takes you from the time that someone is arrested to the time that you get out, God willing, and everything in between, like time spent in prison, what it's like. It's basically how to survive in prison book, pretty much. That's what it kind of is about. It's not really about John Gotti Jr., even though he's complained when I started writing it. The Gottis bothered me a lot about writing it, and I just ignored them. You know, like we said earlier, they bullied me, I just ignored them. You know, and I just kept doing what I was doing. And like I said, the book is about how to survive in prison, how to deal with it, and it's very raw. It's not, there's no sugarcoating in it. It tells you exactly what happens, what the officers do, when the correction officer, when you get to prison, you know, all the dirty stuff that's involved in it. It's a good book for young people to read, you know, for parents to give it to the young people. The younger the better. There's no like dirty stuff, curses, I mean, in it, nothing like that, or no sexual stuff. It's just very basic, you know, about what happens. So it's good for young people to read. John really meant it to scare people straight, to scare young people straight that this is what prison is about. This is what happens when you're there. This is, you know, how it affects your family, your wife, your kids, or if it's a woman, your husband, your kids, because it's not just for men, it's for women too. So that's basically how that came about.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. You know, I'm trying to get in a project with John right now. It's in between phases. I used to help run a dorm at a maximum security juvenile placement for 2 years. That was life after the restaurant industry. I got into working with kids to try and kind of give back a little bit, and that's something that I'd like to work with John. We were talking. Well, I wasn't talking to him personally. I was talking to people that are in contact with him, and going through the channels. And hopefully down the road, me and him could do something about speaking on behalf of the youth of America to not make the same mistakes that we did when we were younger, and taking shortcuts and getting involved in that fast-paced life and gangs and crime with like violence and guns and easy money, drug dealing, all that stuff. So I'm hoping to work on a project like that. But I think that the prison rules, from what I read, from what I seen in prisons and stuff like that, I mean, it's very, very accurate. And I suggest people, go out and get it and read it, because it's some very, very good accurate information in that book. So you used to be an editor in a magazine called Mob Candy. And
That's right.
you and John, you guys linked up through that too, didn't you? That was something that he knew you from or something?
Oh, no, me and John didn't talk back at that time. That was a magazine I did many years ago, back around 2006, 7, around there. I did it for like 7 years. The magazine's not around anymore. Hasn't been published since around, I think, 2010 is when the publisher stopped putting the magazine out. It was basically a magazine about the mob, but historically. It wasn't about things that were going on at that time. So we weren't exposing anybody or anything. It was everything that was historically already out there. And we just, gave it a different, brought it out in a different way, in a different twist. So it's like taking A&E and putting it into a book. To a magazine, rather. That's pretty much what it was all about. A little bit of girls, women here, a little bit of other things like cigars, cars, not just about the mob alone, movies. So it had a lot of different other elements outside of mob stories. So it was a lot of fun when we did it.
Yeah, and I know, right now a lot of guys are starting to come out to kind of do the same thing, build podcasts, and that used to be in the life, like you got like John Alite, Sammy the Bull, Michael Franzese. They're like the top podcasting guys in not just that culture, but of all of podcasting. Like their numbers are just through the roof with the amount of viewers that they get. And you got these trolls that sit in their basement and they want to like say dumb stuff like they're spilling the stuff about the life and all this stuff. But like you said with Mob Candy, they're just pretty much telling stories that already occurred. And they wanna label people like these trolls want to say things like, oh, they're ratting out people and stuff like that. And like that whole rat thing, I can't stand when people use that terminology because they don't even know what it really means. Like what the stories that are being told don't incriminate anybody. These guys are pretty much taking their street life, using it as influential information that's already out there that they already did time for and stuff. And they're trying to inspire young people, middle-aged people to get out of that life because it's not worth it. There's so much opportunity out there right now between like what you can do on the internet, like doing your own podcast like I'm doing right now. You can create your own website, sell merchandise. You can write your own book like you do. Not saying that it's easy, but there's other opportunities out there. I mean, these guys are doing incredible stuff with their platforms, and I have a project coming up on starting September 6th, every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Me and Larry Mazza are going to have our own show called The Life 101. And it's going to be a little bit about the mob life, but it's also going to be about sports. Me and Larry are both into fitness. We're going to talk about fitness stuff. And I don't want to make like toxic masculinity like these Democrats like to promote, but it's going to be more of like the official guys show. You know what I mean? Everything you would talk about, like upcoming football games, and girls can listen to it too. I mean, I'm not making it sexist or anything, but it's everything that guys would bullshit about. You know, stuff at the gym, sports, mob life. We're going to throw like a little bit of twist to everything in it. So it's going to be a fun segment we're going to do starting every Tuesday in September. We're going to run it right through.
Oh, sounds cool. Larry's a good friend of mine, actually. Getting back to what you mentioned about rats, I don't like that term either, because all these stupid people that come out there and say Larry's a rat, Michael was a rat, John's a rat, Anthony Arreolata is a rat. All these people that say these things are, I mean, not to be mean or anything, but they're complete morons. Because there was something an old-time gangster told me. He passed away now. I actually went to his funeral. I met him once or twice in my life. His name is Sonny Francis. He was Michael's father. Even though Michael is not his biological son, which a lot of people may not know. But that's the truth. But Sonny one time told me something that stuck with me. He says to me that unless you walk in my own shoes, don't judge me. Unless you walk in my shoes, which makes a lot of sense. So you think of guys that talk bad about John or about Larry, you know, unless you have walked in their shoes and experienced what they've experienced and understand the reason why they did what they did. Everybody has a reason to do what they do. They don't do it just for the hell of doing it. You know, especially when it comes to a life decision, you know, life and death decision almost. Especially with John. No, I'm not just saying this because he's a friend of mine. This is I'm just stating facts. You know, John, a lot of people don't do the due diligence to understand why he did what he did. The man is an Albanian, like you mentioned earlier. He's not Italian. He never took an oath. Basically, he's an associate. He can do whatever the hell he wants, really. And the guy left the States when he found out he was under indictment. So he left. He went on the lam, as we say. Ended up in Europe, then ended up in Brazil. And then he got pinched in Brazil by the Brazilian authorities, not by the Americans. So he ended up in one of the worst prisons in the world. It's called Ayo Franco. Terrible prison. The worst. You wouldn't send your worst enemy there, trust me. So here he is in one of the worst prisons in the world, under the worst conditions you can dream of. So you would think he would rat, right? If you were him, you would say, well, fuck this, I got a rat. What am I doing here? You know. So he didn't. He kept his mouth shut, which says a lot to me. So then he got extradited to Florida, to the States, and the feds told him, hey, look, we got this stack of paperwork here that 30 guys flipped on you while you were in Brazil. 30. John Jr. was one of them who proffered, what they call proffers when you sit with the government. Once you sit with the government, you're considered a rat, as far as I'm concerned. So he finds out 30 guys ratted on him. So the Fed said, okay, you got a choice here. You either can do life in prison with all the evidence we have here, or you can help us. Now, if you were him, Scott, what would you do?
You got to worry.
I mean,
you
really,
gotta
think
worry
about it.
you. I mean, we had this discussion countless times. That, you know, the best way I can put it to the audience that they don't understand is like that terminology you were using. They call that Queen of the Night, right, or Queen of the Day. And you know,
That's
like, okay, so the best way I can break it down to the audience about this whole, to clarify this whole rat thing, is you get married to a girl, okay, and I'm going to use this metaphorically. I'm getting married to a girl. We swear an oath. We take a vow. We're supposed to, you know, stay loyal to each other. We're supposed to follow the same rules. We're supposed to do all that. Well, now the girl, a.k.a. metaphorically, like somebody like John, like his boss, or somebody like Larry, his boss, goes ahead and cooperates with the government. The girl goes and bangs 10 guys. But then nobody says anything. But then the husband, meaning the lower ranking mob affiliate, goes and bangs one girl. after his wife just banged 10 guys. You going to call that guy a cheater? It's the same thing.
Good point. That's a good point. That's exactly what it is. What you just said. Larry Mazza's boss, Greg Scarpa, was a rat for 30 years. John Jr. sat with the government. 30 guys that were with John Alite on the street, like running one on, ratted on him. So why should he go to jail for them?
When they're not following the rules to begin
Why?
with.
Yeah, and those guys were the Italian guys. Those are the guys who freaking took the oath. He's Albanian. He took no oath. So he's got nothing. There's no reason for him to even follow the rules in reality. But he did for a long time. So to me, I give kudos to him, not because he's my friend, because of the fact that he did keep his mouth shut for so long. And these guys flipped on him like this without even thinking about it. So what does that tell you? To me, John was more of a mob guy than these guys were.
It's hypocritical behavior. That's what it is, and and if they're worrying about them, then you got to worry about you, and that's what it all comes down to. When you're facing life for 100 years, you gotta if they're not being loyal to you, you got to worry about what you could do for yourself.
See, that the problem is, Scott. Then you have the argument. All right, I spoke to a guy that was still on the street. I'm not going to say his name. And we had this discussion, just like you and I right now. And he said to me, well, when you're in that life, you know what's expected. So you live or die. You go to prison. If you got to go to prison, you go to prison. That's it. And we were talking about Sammy a little bit. So Sammy knew he was possibly going to get whacked by John Sr. Well, that's the life you chose, right? So you have that argument too. That you decide to be in this life, this is what's expected. You're going to get whacked, you're going to get whacked. Just like the guy that Sammy killed, Johnny Keys. Johnny Keys was a New Jersey guy, and he was told to go whack him. When Johnny Keys was going to get killed by Sammy, Johnny Keys knew he was going to get killed. He knew it once he got in the car with Sam. He knew what was up. So instead of crying and moaning, oh, I didn't do it, please don't kill me, what did he do? He told John, listen, just make sure you take my shoes off before you take me out. Sammy, Sammy to this day will tell you that affected him a lot. He respected that guy. He respected Johnny Keys after he said that to him. So in other words, he took his hit like a man. Didn't moan. So that argument does come into the picture. Like if you took an oath, you know what to expect. But at the same token, John Alite never took no oath. He wasn't a made guy. So that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're going to have, not that there's anything wrong with it, but the people that throw that terminology out and they, make that big stink about that, they're people that work in, grocery stores and, Walmart and stuff. They never walk the walk of a gangster. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I respect everybody that makes the world go round, whether you work at Walmart or you're making hoagies at the local deli. I don't care what you do, but don't throw out don't throw out slang that doesn't fit. I can't stand when people are uneducated and they throw out slang that doesn't fit the criteria. It's just dumb.
Well, that's what I said earlier. It's people have to do their due diligence before they, label people. Find out a little bit more about their history. Find out why they did what they did. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe there's always an underlying reason to what things people do. So just like whatever I did or whatever you did when we were young, you chose the road you took because that's the decision you made. So there's a reason why you did something like that. There's a reason why I walked away from the gang life. I did it for a reason. I did it because I wanted something better for myself. And especially after I got pinched and I sat in a cell, I looked around and I said, is this what I want? And I said, do I really want to be in this place right now? And that's where, a light bulb hit. And I said, oh, no, this ain't for me. As much as I still like hanging around guys like that, I wouldn't want to be part of that world because, it made you stop and think. So that was my reasoning. You know, so like I said, everybody, there's a reason behind everything people do, and people have to learn a little bit, do a little, like I said, do their education, get a little educated about Johnny Alite or Larry Mazur or Michael Francis or any of the other guys that I know that had their reason to walk away. Find out why before you start throwing names out.
Absolutely. I mean I mean, once again we go back to what I was talking about earlier. I mean, the more we try going back and forth with those people, I mean, people are lazy. They're not going to do their own research. It's quick. It's easier for them just to make false allegations towards people. People are lazy. They won't educate themselves. But you got to thread on that fine line of what I talked about earlier. You can't make people relevant. If you feed into those trolls and those people that are underground pussies, you lost. You lost. Because you fed into them and you made them relevant. By ignoring them, they go away eventually.
Eventually, yeah, they get bored. Eventually, you know, what Johnny Alite calls them,
I call them keyboard
gangsters.
warriors.
They're not even warriors.
They're the guys in the
funny.
90s that used to block numbers to call people and threaten them. They wouldn't call, so like the caller ID couldn't pick it up. They would call people from a blocked number.
Yes, that's, yeah.
But to get back on
that.
your books, the one your series, you have a part 1 and a part 2 to a book called Destinies. That's what got your career as an author to take off, and you were saying that you might be turning it into a screenplay. For those people that didn't hear about Destinies or don't know about Destinies, do you want to explain to the audience what Destinies is about, what inspired you to write it, and a little bit about the screenplay that might be coming up?
Well, the screenplay is already done. I'm actually in talks. I'm in contract with a production company to get the project made. Might be even going to the American film market in November to approach distributors and film companies. But Destinies is something I wrote many years ago. I wrote it like, my God, 15 years ago. And then I only recently decided to, a couple of years ago, decide to write the book. And this is when I was like, I think it was about 2017, 2018, is when I started writing it again. Like I said, I wrote it many years ago. So I wrote about, 4 drafts. And it was a lot of work. So then I finally approached a publisher. No, actually, no, I apologize. I first put it out as a self-published book, like a lot of people do. And it started gaining steam. And I was doing pretty well with it. So then eventually a publisher called Austin Macauley, which is a London, New York publisher, decided to publish it. And that's when that happened. That was pretty exciting, getting on Amazon and a lot of other sites, book sites. And then only the past maybe year, I decided to make it into a film. And now, like I said, I'm in with a company called, possibly going to be working with them. It's not concrete just yet, but one of the actors from The Sopranos, Lou Martini Jr., he's has a company called Shake the Tree Productions, and I might be working with him to actually produce the project, to get it made. So that's where I am with that at the moment.
From like a verbal standpoint, could you verbally describe the book, like what the book's about? What's that?
The storyline?
Yeah, like what's the storyline?
The storyline?
Just for somebody that didn't read or don't know about the book, a verbal preview almost to what you can expect and what the book's about.
Okay, well, the book, without trying to give away the whole thing, I'll try the best I can because it's kind of hard. Basically, the main character is a woman, and she inadvertently gets caught into the web of the mob, and she falls in love with the guy that that becomes head of the mob eventually. But she falls in love with him prior to him becoming the boss. And there's a lot of things in between. There's FBI crackdown, mob war, but stuff in the background. So she falls in love with him. They eventually have a kid, a boy. Unfortunately, she suffers a tragic accident, and the boss at the time has to raise a son. Now the boss has no brothers or sisters, and he's not going to raise a 2-year-old. So he decides to honor his wife's wish not to have the son mixed up in that world. So he has a kid. His son gets adopted, puts him up for adoption, gets adopted by another family, a very good, straight, well-to-do family. And the boy grows up. The story shifts to the boy's life, and his name is Tommy. And he grows up, and eventually, what happens is he becomes interested in law, and he becomes a prosecuting attorney for the district attorney's office. And eventually, what happens while he's working with the DA, but mind you, he doesn't know who his father is. He thinks his adopted father is his real father. He has no idea who his biological father is. When he's offered a case to prosecute, he gets excited to do it. And it's a mob case. And the guy he's going to prosecute is his biological father. But he doesn't know that until the trial. And when the trial comes, he can't back out. Because now he's like, I'm going to prosecute my father? Are you kidding me? So, but he can't back out of the case, because if he does, it prejudices the case. So he goes along with it. He manages with the DA to prosecute his father. And at the end of towards the end of the story, he receives an anonymous fax at his office that if he doesn't find a loophole to release his biological father, Santo his name is, if he doesn't find a loophole, they're going to expose the fact that he's related to the defendant, which would destroy his career. So that's kind of where the book ends.
Yeah, that sounds real suspenseful, thrill-seeking, on the edge of your seat. It sounds really, really. Was there anything that inspired you about that? Did something inspire you to write that, or did it something you just kind of just came up with?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. I mean, like I said, I grew up around that world, so I know a lot of those kind of guys. So I know how they talk, I know how they act, all that kind of stuff. So that's in the book. You'll see it with the wording and everything. But a little bit is about my own, some things I experienced myself growing up. So it's a little bit of both. A little bit of personal, a little bit of just being creative. So it's kind of a blend of both.
That definitely sounds like, I hope it gets put into motion soon, because I really like to watch something like that. That's something definitely to look forward to, and for the audience to look forward to. And then you have another book called Mafia Ties. It's about the Greek mob.
Yes. Yeah, that book was actually originally the book was supposed to be about the head of the Greek crew here in Queens, in New York, who I know personally. I've visited him in prison a couple of times. I know his whole family. It was supposed to be about his life originally, but after I sent him the first chapter that I wrote, he called me from inside, from prison, and he said to me, you make me sound like Al Capone. I told him, hey, you weren't a choir boy. What do you want me to say? You're a boss of a crew. What do you want me to say to you? So at that point, I honored his wishes, and I didn't write. We didn't continue writing a book about his life. So I decided to write about the Greek mob in general, worldwide, because the book covers how the Greeks work with the Italians, the Irish, the Albanians, worldwide. Like I said, in the U.S., Canada, Australia, Greece. So it covers that whole entire area. So it talks about a Greek crew, ethnic crew that most people don't know about. Most people don't realize even existed, because the Greeks were so much under the radar that a lot of people didn't know they were as big as they were. The guy in New York here that I knew was very tight with John Gotti. They used to go to the horse races, things like that. I mean, these guys were pretty big. They weren't as flamboyant as the Italians were. So that's why they were so much under the radar that people didn't know much about. So it's an interesting book for people that want something different, to read about a different kind of ethnic mob that most people just don't know about.
It's a very unique topic too, because like we were talking earlier, is before we went on set, people hear the word mob or mafia, they automatically, lightning bolts go off, and they see the Italian flag. It's just Italian. They don't realize that like
Yeah.
every culture has a criminal entity of what's called the mob, which is like like a brotherhood, an organization, some sort of organized crime, and like you got the Russian mob, the Greek mob, the Italian mob, the Sicilian mob, the Irish mob. You could just keep going through all the cultures if you want. People don't understand that they all kind of network with one another to an extent, and some work with one another. But as far as like the Greek mob goes, and I could be wrong with this, like outside of my area, I live in Pennsylvania, and I notice like where Pennsylvania connects to New Jersey and stuff, a lot of your Greek. I want to say this without like incriminating anybody, but a lot of them run diners, right or wrong. Restaurants and diners. That's a big thing in the Greek community is they run diners and restaurants.
Yeah. Right. That's true. But you're in the PA area, so that's interesting because there was a very strong Greek crew in South Philly that was under Nicky Scarfo. Actually, no. Actually, it was prior. Angelo Bruno. Angelo Bruno was the boss of the Philly mob, which with Skinny Merlino and John Stamper and all them. There was a Greek crew in South Philly and Upper Darby, PA, that ran the. They controlled the PCP trade, metamorphine. They ran that whole thing. The Greeks ran it, not the Italians. So the Greeks, which was run by Harry Petros, who I know his son, and Steve Budas, those two were the bosses of the Greek mob in South Philly. They had about 40 guys in their crew, and they used to kick up to the Italians. So it's since you mentioned PA, they were right in your area.
Yeah, I'm an hour and 45 minutes from Philly. I grew up going to Philly. I know the Philadelphia area really well. It's one of my favorite places to visit when I have spare time. There's all different parts of the town that you want a good meal. There's a great Italian section. You got Old City. You got all the sporting events. There's a sports complex off Broad Street. You can get lost in Philly really fast. Like there's just so much to do.
Yeah, pretty much. The Italian market in South Philly was very big. One of the more common Greek restaurants where Steve Budas was killed was Meleti's restaurant, which is a Greek restaurant in South Philly, which is pretty popular. He was shot there. He was because he wasn't kicking up. The Greeks told Nicky Scarpa to go fuck himself because he wanted more money from them, and because when Angelo Bruno was killed and Nicky Scarpa eventually took over, he wanted a higher street tax, and the Greeks said, no, we're not going to pay you. Go fuck yourself. So that didn't work out too well because he whacked out both of the bosses. Just to give you a little bit of history.
Nicky was
there.
a wild card. There's a lot of history with Nicky. He was a small guy, but he came in like a fucking cowboy.
He was a psychopath. He was one of the worst bosses ever. Him and John Gotti, and I respected John Sr., but they weren't good bosses. They just didn't know. They loved the limelight, they loved the spotlight, loved to dress in good clothes, but they just didn't know how to really, tone it down.
Right in downtown Philly, Nicky Scarfo's son on Halloween night back in the 80s, he got shot up and he survived in Dante and Luigi's restaurant down in downtown Philly. It's right in the middle of downtown.
Yeah, Nicky Jr. Yeah. Actually, Nicky Jr. was not even part of the Philly crew anymore. He was inducted into the Lucchese family. Nicky asked for him to be inducted into that crew. So he was connected to New York, really, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, and then for a while there was the Philly Wars going on with Merlino and Stanfa, because Stanfa came down from New York, and he was originally from Philly, went up to New York, then came back to Philly to try and settle things down, and that didn't work out too well for him.
No, not at all. Well, John Stanfa made the big mistake of John Stamper was a Sicilian. He wasn't American born, and his ways of doing things were very different than Skinny Merlino. Skinny Merlino is like a smaller version of John Gotti Sr. It's the same thing. He likes to flamboyant, likes to be out there, but I got to give him credit. He's a king manipulator. The guy can manipulate anything. He's unbelievable. Give him credit for that. But yeah, Nicky Scarfo was too wild, and John Stamper his mistake was he enlisted a bodyguard in his crew called Ronnie Previte, and Ronnie Previte was a rat.
Ron Previte, the cop. He was an ex-cop, right?
Right. Yeah. And John Stamper made the mistake of bringing him into his circle, and Previte just destroyed him. He ratted everybody out, formed on everybody. So, and he's still walking around. Yeah, I'm not going to say he was an angel, that's for sure. But he did his job where he infiltrated the Philly crew, and John Stamper especially. So that didn't make Stamper look too good at that point. But we can go on and on with the Philly crew.
I respect, that's right in my backyard. I have respect for the guys. They lived the life, they did what they did, and I have respect for them. I have nothing bad to say really about the Philly crew. I have to respect the hometown boys, but they, everybody's got their flaws, and most of which the ones that you paint out, the ones that you said were very accurate. I enjoyed having you tonight. Glad you came in on short notice. I hope we can get together again soon down the road, and I'm looking forward to hopefully your screenplay takes effect and move forward with that movie. And for the people watching today, you'll be seeing some links up for where you can purchase Destinies 1 and 2 if you want to read the book before the movie comes out. We got Prison Rules with Johnny Alite. Johnny Alite's a very popular guy right now on podcasting and online. I'm a big fan of John Alite. I hope to do work with him soon. I would consider it a blessing, and I hope we link up one of these days. I think we could do some good things with inspiring the youth to not, go out and make the same mistakes that, once were made. The unique book, Mob Ties, about the Greek Mafia, that unique topic that nobody really talks about, that you touched on, that's something different that nobody really talks about, and I think that's very interesting. That's my next book, definitely on my list that I'm going to go get. And at the end of this episode, people that are watching, you'll see the links where you can get these books. But
well, I also like to add, if anybody's interested in getting the books from me, signed books that I could sign them for them, they can just email me at if they want, Nick Christophers 50 at Gmail. If anybody wants books directly from me, because you can't get them signed from Amazon, that's for sure. But they can, if they want, they can order them directly through me, and they can get them signed if they like. It's up if they inclined to do so.
Nick, do you have a direct website that you have? Do you have an online merchandising store, or do you kind of just sell through Amazon usually?
Well, like I said, nickchristopher's.org is my website. But they can contact me through the website as well. Some of my stuff is listed there also, and they can hit me back and from there, and we can make arrangements.
All right, Nick. Well, thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you coming in on short notice, and hope to stay in touch with you, my brother.